Good morning, beautiful people. I am Ra'ama Hetep Amen, and thanks for joining me on my first show entitled the Ra'ama Hetep Amen Podcast Show. Today's show I wanted to use to discuss this concept of relationship validation and how we get into validating ourselves through relationships and how that negatively impacts our relationship endurance. As a matter of fact, it's my belief that a lot of relationships end, unfortunately, simply because we're seeking validation within that relationship, within those relationships. And so the goal of this particular podcast today is for you to get a sense of what relationship validation is and how you can hopefully overcome relationship validation to find your true happiness. Now, let's start out by defining what is relationship validation. Relationship validation is simply, in my opinion, when you associate the possession of that person in your life, whether that person is your spouse, your boyfriend, girlfriend, your partner, whatever that person is, when you associate the possession of that person with your life fulfillment, your life happiness, and even on some occasions, your life existence. In other words, your life existence is fulfilled through the mere possession or having this person within your life. Now, give me an opportunity to continue to break this down, but we call that the false love. And what is the false love? The associating the object of the person with the fulfillment of your happiness. We call that the false love because in and of itself, through philosophical understanding that's been passed down, it is absolutely impossible for you to find happiness outside of yourself. So anytime we seek happiness outside of ourselves, we already know that we're going to go through much pain and suffering because it's absolutely impossible for us to experience happiness outside of our person. As a matter of fact, we take it a step further. We say that you existed in happiness prior to the manifestation of the universe. Prior to the manifestation of the almost infinite things within the universe, you existed in happiness. You existed in happiness prior to the potential of a thing to actually stand in for your happiness. You existed before all those things. So when we call it the false love because, when you associate the object of the person with the fulfillment of your program, you put yourself, unfortunately, through the experience of pain and suffering because it's impossible, absolutely impossible for something outside of yourself to provide you with happiness. So that's relationship validation. Now, relationship validation in and of itself does not destroy relationships. To us, we consider relationship validation kind of like a virus that creates the disease. One of those diseases is what we call possessiveness. So not only are you happy because you have the object of the person within your life, but now you must define how this object performs to maintain your happiness. So eventually we try or attempt to hold your partner or spouse accountable to your perceived notions of happiness. And therefore, this person is held accountable to do this song and dance to maintain your happiness. As a matter of fact, unfortunately, we are trained incorrectly, I might add, that we are supposed to diminish ourselves to make somebody else happy. And that's the actual way it's supposed to go. So therefore, in order for me to experience happiness within the relationship, I must do the song and dance of my partner who's attempting to hold me accountable to their egotistical perceived ideas and notions of happiness because they're seeking validation through the relationship, through me as the spouse. And so that becomes a level of what we call possessiveness, where now you are putting me in a box by which I must perform in order to make you happy. Now, it's interesting, but what ends up happening is that you feel as though you're trapped, you feel as though you're in jail, and that's the reason why the concept of the ball and chain concept came about. Because according to the ball and chain concept, you're tied down. You can't go anywhere. You're in jail. You're in prison. You're unfulfilled. What eventually ends up happening is you become trapped. You can't find your way. You can't find your voice, and you become unhappy. And eventually you attempt to get out of the relationship or experience unending misery and unhappiness simply under the pretense that it is your duty to be unhappy to make somebody else happy. Because that's what they told you in your religious paradigm. That's what they told you, life is about, to diminish yourself in order to make somebody else happy. So, for instance, you might find that your partner doesn't necessarily like you to talk to other men. So let's say, your partner says, "Hey, I don't want you talking to other men." Then your performance of this quote unquote protocol is being done to diminish yourself in the process, but it's being done simply to help your partner be happy, because that particular person is seeking validation through you. When I first heard of the concept of the ball and chain, I was like, man, what a rude way to define a relationship. How is it possible for you to experience happiness through a ball and chain concept? But once you come to understand that people are seeking validation through a relationship, you become quite understanding of, the ball and chain concept. Meaning I got to get comfortable with being trapped in this relationship. I got to get comfortable with, not having my voice in this relationship. I got to get comfortable with simply diminishing myself to make you happy. And that is unfortunately incorrect. And so many people attempt to do that without understanding the true reality of that process. Now, what we are trained to understand is that we are all expressions of the source manifesting through the limitations of the mind. So therefore, we're all source manifesting through the limitations of the mind. You have your own destiny and life fulfillment to manifest, because we're functioning as the source on the behalf of the source through the limitations of the mind itself. So we have purpose, we have meaning. Our life has purpose, our life has meaning. As an expression of the source manifesting through the limitations of the mind, we're not here to be in prison. We're not here to be jailed. It is impossible for us to be diminished. And it's definitely impossible for us to seek to diminish ourselves in order to make somebody else happy. And through that person's happiness, we're finding some level of rudimentary happiness. You have your own personal goals, your personal things that you must do, that you're here to do, and you are obligated to fulfill those things. So it is important that we understand that relationship validation leads to possessiveness and leads to this quote unquote ball and chain mindset that limits your ability to even experience your own personal success. Relationships are not here to diminish. Our relationships are here to become the avenue from which we both find our success. Our relationship continuity brings us into higher expressions of our own personal successes. You're not in a relationship simply to be diminished as a cost to making somebody else happy. Your job here is to use the assets and liabilities of your partner to increase your level of success and your ability to achieve. Sometimes in lectures when I talk about relationships and things of that nature, I always say that, I'm not in love with my wife, but I love my wife. And a lot of people take pause with that because they don't understand the concept. You see, when I say I'm not in love with my wife, in essence, what I'm saying is my wife does not validate me. You see, the more that I seek to validate my happiness through my wife, the more I'm going to try to hold her accountable to these ancillary things that makes me happy. The more I bring the concept of the ball and chain into the relationship, the more unhappy I become, because the more I attempt to hold her accountable to these things, the more unhappy she gets, and therefore the more unhappy I get, because the relationship is not in the position to do what it's there to do, which is to increase us and allow us to experience our happiness through our life success versus the possession of the object itself. So when I say, I love my wife, but I'm not in love with my wife, because what I'm saying is that my wife does not validate me. I don't care who my wife talks to. I don't care what she does, because what she does and how she does it doesn't validate my life success, doesn't validate my happiness. I attempt to maintain my happiness within my person. It's this unattached notion. It is love free of attachment that allows us to express ourselves at a greater level that actually brings us into a state of successful relationship, successful harmony within a relationship. Now, this has been proven time and time again. For instance, if you experience this, or maybe a friend experienced this, where you're unhappy in a relationship, and as a result of being unhappy, unfortunately or fortunately, you got into some extra relationship affair, some extramarital affair or whatever. So let's say, for the sake of argument, this happened with a coworker, which is 90% of the time where they happen, where you're voicing your displeasure with your partner. And of course, one of your coworkers kind of acknowledges those things, agrees with you, and says that he would do even greater things with you. And eventually you get into a relationship. Now, what ends up happening is that, for instance, the sensual or sexual energy through extramarital affairs is actually increased. So you enjoy it more, simply because, not because this person has the ability to make you happy, but simply because you're unattached. There's no ball and chain there. Since the ball and chain has been removed, you guys can experience the full capabilities of each other sexually. And that increases the intensity of the sexual act, which makes you feel better about it. But the reason why I'm bringing this up is simply because that's proof that the more unattached you are, the greater your success will become, or the greater experience of success and pleasure you can achieve. But see, you don't have that same energy with your spouse, because we have a ball and chain concept here. And since the ball and chain is there, it's impossible for you to experience the necessary freedom to express yourself to the highest abilities, to bring both of you guys into states of sensual pleasure and so on and so on. So when I say I love my wife, I'm saying that I am free. My happiness is not bound by what she does, how she does it, but through that freedom, I'm able to perform at a higher level on her behalf, and thus we both are able to experience higher levels of success and prosperity. Now, so relationship validation leads to possessiveness and leads to feeling trapped and creating that ball and chain concept. The purpose of relationships is to increase. You are supposed to meet, date, be attracted to someone that not only is physically attractive. It's important for you to be physically attracted to someone. However, you must understand that this person must have the talents and skills to uplift you beyond your limitations and liabilities. We're taught that everybody is relative expressions of ignorance and experience. We're all relative expressions of things that we do well or bring into a benevolent fashion, and we're all expressions of ignorance of things that we don't do that well or we experience malevolence. We are supposed to partner with people that are able to use their talents and skills, their assets and liabilities to raise us beyond our quote-unquote sin, so that we can experience higher levels of personal success. So since we're all relative expressions of ignorance and experience, we are all in need to be uplifted and saved. And one of the greatest ways that we can get that level of upliftment and increase that we need to experience higher levels of success is through the relationship between spouse, marriage, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever. Because if you think about the intimate space that creates allows us to get to know each other at a level even beyond our parents, to give us the ability to tweak and rewire things, right? To give us the level of trust to allow people to tweak and rewire things within us using their talents and skills that should express in us being able to make more money and being able to experience more sensual success, being able to experience higher career success, and so on. So that's why we date, to be attractive, of course, but also to be increased. And increasement has nothing to do with validation. Increasement is saying this person has the capability to sacrifice themselves to ensure that I am increased to be a better person, to be a more successful person. And therefore, I find happiness within the relationship when I'm able to now experience the success as a result of being in this partnership. Since happiness is with me, my happiness is within the things that I do and the things that I experience. Therefore, if I can experience higher levels of success and prosperity as a result of this partnership, then I found my internal happiness through the success of the relationship. And the concept of love for versus being in love allows me to truly experience the love and sacrifice of this person as a result of them not seeking validation in me. You know, we say that there are basically 4 stages of a relationship, and at the 3rd stage is where you witness the empowerment, your success, your life success, where you met, where you've come to achieve. You associate that level of success with your partner. And that is a phenomenal space to be in when you're seeking to not validate the person as the object of your happiness, but show appreciation and respect. Show appreciation, respect, and reverence to position of the person in your life that allowed you to climb the mountain that high, and vice versa. The love for versus the being in love doesn't hurt. It doesn't diminish. It allows both partners to experience their various expressions of success. It allows both partners to go out into the world and do big things. It allows both partners to experience the highest level of success that relationship can manifest. When you say, I'm in love with a person, you're seeking validation, and therefore that creates this imprisonment within the relationship, these limitations on what you can do and how you do it, the ball and chain, and eventually that leads to misery, suffering, divorce, discord, and all those things. I hope this helped. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my YouTube channel and also subscribe to the podcast channel so you can get updated on other videos and things that are coming out. Also, you can follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook under Ra'ama Hetep. That nature, you can also follow us on OnlyFans at Ra'ama Hetep, where we do Sunday service, where we do part lecture, part meditation, where you can get more of an in-depth understanding of the Maasai philosophy and things of that nature. Peace and blessings. Please stay away from seeking validation within your relationship because it always leads in misery and unhappiness.